Hello, this is Team 10 Senior Project. This is the project management system by Devin, Dariush, Tony, Woo Hyung, and Emre. This project is actually just a request from the CCSC department from Professor Don Tatum and the Dean. What Professor Tatum and the Dean want is to create a repository to manage the project, contract for hire, research, and allow faculty to more efficiently use and manage the contract for hire within our college. This is the grand purpose of the project, but what our team will be covering is on a much smaller scope. This project has three main milestones that Professor Tatum has set up for our group to accomplish. Milestone 1 is to create the database. Milestone 2 is create the user interface. Milestone 3 is the ability to input data and run reports and have documentation for future groups to develop upon. So this is what is projected to be a project that spans several semesters. So there will be several development teams on this project, so we won't be the only one. That is why we will cover this in a much lower scope, because we'll have other teams in the future working on this project as well. So in other words, to reiterate what Professor Tatum wants us to do is that she wants us to create a functional database that can house at least like 2 users. That she says, at least in our iteration and our requirements, which are basically the dean and herself, and then construct a structure to allow them to input data and generate reports. So far our group has decided to create the database on AWS and construct a nice usable UI on Node.js that you'll see later on in the slides, and also use a free software from Microsoft called Microsoft WCF, which will be a nice intermediary between the backend and our requests. Our database is currently hosted on AWS on an EC2 Linux server as a relational database service. The database itself is based on MySQL with all the tables set up. Our database has been designed with 8 tables, as you can see here: user, update, student, contract, member, sponsor, project, and professor. User is kept separate as that entity should not interact with the other tables in the database, while student, professor, member, you can see their relation there, have an obvious relation because these are the members of the team. Update is there to log whatever has gotten updated on the project management system. We believe this is important because, like, for example, our project will have future teams working on this, but projects in the system might have future teams working on it, so we want to log future changes and all that as well. Contracts are tied to sponsors, which are tied to each of the projects, and that should be what we have so far for our database. Currently, for our web pages, we have a couple of them designed so far. As you can see here, we have the nice KSU logo, and also in the background we have the KSU colors as nice styling as well. So as you can see, currently here, this is our login page. And this will allow students, professors, and administrators to just log in to the project management system. Next page you see here is the registration page, which will allow new users to register and then access the database. Next you see the screen after you log in, which will allow you to access the reporting or create a project page, which will create a new section for the project. So it's like if you have a new group working on a project, we just create a new project section here for them. Next, you see the reporting page that we have created so far. This has a couple of categories in order to sort the data and create a report. So that's all for the web pages that we have so far. And now we see the Microsoft WCF. The Microsoft WCF is currently still being implemented because for our current milestones and everything, this is what we'll have around like 3 weeks later. We're working on it right now. We have the basic backend server developed, but we still have to create the classes and everything in order to have this function correctly. But the main idea of WCF is that it has 3 parts. The 3 parts are the host, the clients, and the services. The client will house all the information the user needs to see. The host will be on the server and will be used to host services with different endpoints, and because of that, it's logical to have the host and services on their own like application versus like the client, because the client can't mess with like the host and services like directly, while the host and services interact with each other well. And the services, of course, will manage like various services like logging in and query handling. The WCF is important in handling this because it already has like innate security benefits that's already included in the software, which will greatly help protect our database. This is the AWS project diagram, and you can see there are multiple security features to protect our database. At the start, you see the HTTP request, and each request has to go through a security group or a firewall, and then the request is processed through a software called NGINX, or I'm not going to try to say Nginx, whatever. NGINX is an important software that we're using because it's a load balancing software. So what this will allow us to do is control the flow of traffic to our server in a specific way, so we can balance the traffic. So with the we could balance the traffic and also like limit requests, or at least control what kind of traffic volume gets through and processed into our important Node.js, which will then generate a web page or a response which will be sent back to the user. A quick point on the NGINX: this software is important in the fact that if the project develops even further, it will be helpful that a traffic controlling software is already in place when the project moves to maybe KSU's own Red Hat servers, or where we probably need to house a plethora of users, because the KSU servers are definitely if we already have it implemented into the KSU system, we'll have all the students at KSU using the system, so there will be a lot of traffic, and NGINX is basically future-proofing our system when or if it comes to that stage. And then the EC2 server itself will be the one fetching and requesting data from our database, as you can see here as it sends queries to our database, and then we get a certain response back that we can get to Node.js and then generate it to the users as like a web page or something. Here is the project schedule that our group constructed in our initial report. And so far, we have accomplished everything that we wanted to do by this midterm presentation. It's kind of hard to see here, but this is basically the database part of the presentation and everything. Database part of the project and everything. So to tell you how our development has been, so in addition to the reports that we make for this class, we also have online meetups with Professor Tatum, in which we get feedback on whatever we progressed on in those 2 weeks. These meetups are important in order to get the design of the project correct for our client, the dean, and Professor Tatum, and allow us to get a better picture of what we have to do in the future, and to see what we have created so far is correct right now. For example, during the development cycle, every time, one of the last meetups that we had, our old database design that we sent to Professor Tatum was missing the contract table. And the contract table would have been a crucial misstep in our database design that we could have left off until who knows when. But having Professor Tatum actively give us feedback every 2 weeks is very important. And now we have our database pretty much set. Maybe we'll have some tables switched there. Like for example, we might even add maybe emails to the tables in order if we want to get another service like retrieving a forgotten password or anything like that. Another important feedback that we've gotten back from Professor Tatum is how to create the reports. Because there are various documents and various ways to report, we just need to, apparently she wants us to consolidate a report where we only cover the basic categories that every report has, so we can get some solidarity in that. Other than that, we have our database relationships and everything sorted out, as you can see from before, and we have also created the database itself on an easily accessible platform, AWS, which is just very easily accessible because it's on the cloud and it's also scalable, which will greatly make everything we do in the future easier as we continue on developing this. As you can see from our schedule, we are already a bit ahead in that we already have developed some of the client side already, as you can see from our web pages. And things we will implement in the latter half will be continuing the reporting page, because we can add different categories and how to report. We want to allow users to dynamically pull back information on request. We want users to also be able to click a button to show more information about a project, which will just be a quality of life change for the students and professors trying to access a project, to just basically know what this project's about, just have the basic descriptions and everything like that, because we are ahead of schedule right now. And finally, we want to develop document storage procedures. And that is all.